How to play fingerstyle or fingerpicking guitar, Book 2, Lesson 1. Revision. If you've discovered this lesson through the YouTube algorithm or by a search, and you've not done any of the previous lessons, you'd really be wise going through Book 1 first, because there's many important fingerstyle lessons in there that you really need to go through first. So I've put a link down below in the description to the complete playlist for Book 1. And to help you with that course, you'll also need the ebooks, which you can get completely free at www.ebooksforguitar.com. Just follow the link on the homepage. Book 2, Lesson 1. Revision and revision exercises. Hopefully you don't need this revision, so we'll just race through some very basic points. And the first one will be the names of the fingers. And the fingers you use for fingerstyle are your primary, P, index, I, middle, M, annular, A, and little finger, L. When playing fingerstyle guitar, you pluck down with the primary and up with the index, middle, and annular finger. The last thing we need to look at in this revision section is the names of the fingers on the fingering hand, and these are simply 1, 2, 3, and 4. But hopefully you know this already from learning chords and scales. Revision Exercise 1. Exercise 1 doesn't have a uniform rhythm, so I'll play it first, free time, without a metronome, so you can get an idea what your target is. If you're following with the tab, notice that on the 4th line there's a repeat back to the beginning of the tune. So you play the first 4 lines twice before continuing to the end. This exercise is 4/4 time, and even though there's no obvious pattern, there is a pattern that happens over 2 bars. And the only place that pattern is broken is where we introduce a moving bass line. Right, let's take a look at the first line, or more accurately, at the first 2 bars. And these 2 bars are played using a G chord, and I'd recommend you using the fourth finger and the third finger to play this chord, and the reason for that will become clear in a moment. However, first, let's repeat those first two bars a few times to get used to the pattern. Here they are being played with a metronome at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Here that is again. Try and play along with it if you think you're ready. Once you can play that at 90 beats per minute, try it at 100 beats per minute. Here it is being played at 100 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Before we try playing the first line, let's take a look at the first 3 chords. And you'll notice I've put the complete chords and the partial chords. And I've done this because I'm aware some people prefer to play the full chords. However, it's not really necessary. You can play the partial chords. And looking at the 3 chords, you'll notice they're all playing the 3rd fret on the bottom E string with the 3rd finger. And the only note that changes is on the top E string, where you start with the 3rd fret with the 4th finger, then go to the 2nd fret with the 1st finger, and finally slide down that 1st finger to the 1st fret of the top E string. Now, these are the only complicated chords in the whole tune, as the rest are very straightforward. However, this particular passage is repeated several times. And these 3 chords, played from the beginning of the tune, would take us down to halfway through the 2nd line. Here's the first 6 bars being played at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. You might want to pause the video here to practice those chord changes. But if not, here it is being played again, but this time at 100 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Here that is again at 100 beats per minute, one last time. Hopefully you noticed that the last bar in that passage has got an added bass note played with the primary finger. And there's many added bass notes through this exercise, and they're all played with the primary finger. So for example, looking at the next two bars, bar 7 and 8, which are playing a C major, you'll notice the last note of bar 8 is another walking bass line where you move from the C to the B. And looking at this in context with the whole tune, you can see it's creating a walking bass line between the C and the A minor, which is the next chord. Let's hear bars 7, 8, 9 and 10 being played, where we go between that C major and the A minor. And again, they'll be played at 100 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Here that is again, one last time at 100 beats per minute. Right, let's take a look at the 11th and 12th bar, or the last two bars of the third line. And this is a D chord throughout, apart from the last two notes, which is a double time bass line, so it's quicker than the bass lines we've done so far. And if you look carefully at the third line and compare it with the fourth line, you'll see they're more or less identical except for that last two notes. Because they are so similar, it's best to learn those two lines at the same time to aid with your memorization of the tune. So let's hear those two lines being played firstly at 90 beats per minute. You'll notice that even though those two bass notes, which are the last two notes of the third line, are pretty quick, they're still being played with the primary or the thumb. You might need to pause the video again here and just practice those two lines. But if you want to continue, here they are being played again, but this time at 100 beats per minute. And as always, there's a 2-bar introduction in case you want to play along. And here that is again, one last time at 100 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Let's try to bring together the first 4 lines. But if you don't think you're ready yet, you could pause the video here and come back to it later. Otherwise, here's the first 4 lines being played at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. And we'll ignore the repeats for now. Let's try that again now, slightly faster, at 100 beats per minute, with a 2-bar introduction. Here that is again, one last time, at 100 beats per minute, with a 2-bar introduction. Once you're fairly happy with the first 4 lines, you can move on to the last 3 lines. And these should be relatively easy to learn, because most of what you play in the last 3 lines, you learned in the first part of the tune. For example, looking at the first line of the last 3 lines, it's basically the first bar, the third bar, the fifth bar, and the 7th bar. However, because we're only playing 1 bar on each chord, the chord changes happen more frequently. Let's hear that line being played at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Here that is again, slightly faster, at 100 beats per minute, with a 2-bar introduction. Try and play along if you think you're ready. Right, let's take a look at the next line, which is just the first 2 bars of the line being played twice, and you're just going between a C and a D. The only slight complication with this line is the fact you've got less time to change the chords, and that's because you've got a moving bass line between each bar, and that's the last note of the bar. Here's that line being played at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Here's that line again, slightly faster, at 100 beats per minute. The last line of the tune is very easy, it's just a G, and you've just got to apply the finger picking pattern to it. The very last note, which is the 3rd fret on the top E string, or a G, is tied together over 2 bars, and this means you just pluck it once and allow it to ring. Sometimes you'll see it just saying let ring, or you'll see the second 3 being in brackets. It depends who's written the tablature. And during the course, I use all three variations so you get used to seeing them. Here's the last line being played at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Hopefully you'll find this quite easy. So here it is again at 100 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction, in case you want to try and play along. Right, let's bring those last three lines together at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Try and play along with it if you think you're ready. Here's those last three lines again at 100 beats per minute. If you think you're ready, you can try playing along with it. It'll have the usual 2-bar introduction. Let's bring the whole exercise together now at 90 beats per minute. However, you might not be ready to play along with it yet, in which case you can come back to the video later and try then. Here it is then at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Here's that exercise one final time at 100 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Revision exercise 2. Chord-wise, exercise 2 and exercise 3 should take very little explanation because we're using basic chords that you've learned in book 1 of the fingerstyle guitar course, and they're some of the most common chords you'll come across whilst playing the guitar. Thinking back to exercise 1, you will have noticed that with that exercise, the bottom 3 strings were covered by the primary finger, and the top 3 strings were covered by the index, middle, and annular finger. And this is pretty common practice. However, it isn't a rule. And this exercise, exercise 2, demonstrates that. Because most of the time, the primary finger is playing the bottom 2 strings, the E and the A. The index finger is playing the D string, the middle finger is playing the G string, and the annular finger is playing the B string. However, this isn't a set rule. So if you take a look at the exercise, whenever you play a D minor, the primary finger is playing the D, the index finger is playing the G, the middle finger is playing the B, and the annular finger is playing the top E string. So every now and again, you'll have to change the position of the picking hand to make sure you're picking the correct strings. This tune is 6/8 time, so there's 6 beats in the bar. And you'll notice at the end of the 4th line, there's a repeat back to the first line again. So you repeat the first 4 lines before continuing on and playing the last 4 lines. Here's the exercise being played through, and I'll play it through 3 time, which means I'll speed up and slow down so it's not fixed to a metronome beat, and this allows me to put more feeling into the tune. So whilst you're learning all of these 3 exercises with a metronome, you want to then strip the metronome away and practice the tune without a metronome so you can put your own feelings into the tune. If you've already been through book 1, this exercise shouldn't take any explanation really, because you should already know all the chords and you've already done this finger picking pattern. The majority of the chords in this exercise should be played as complete chords, but with the G you just have to play the 3rd fret on the bottom E string with the 3rd finger, and this should make all the changes to the G and away from the G a lot smoother. To make it easier to learn, I've split this exercise into 2, so we'll hear the first 4 lines being played first. Remember that it's 6/8 time, so there's 6 beats in the bar. Here's the first 4 lines being played at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. And here that is again, but this time at 100 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. If you're having any trouble with the first 4 lines, it'd be worth pausing the video here and practicing them for a little bit. Otherwise, you could continue on. If you're ready to move on, here's the last 4 lines being played at 90 beats per minute. And here's the last 4 lines again at 100 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. If you're ready to, we can bring the whole exercise together now. And that would entail playing the first 4 lines twice because of the repeat, and then playing the last 4 lines. Here that is then being played at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. To finish up this exercise, I'll play it one last time at 100 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction, and the repeats will be included. Revision Exercise 3. This exercise has got a very similar finger picking pattern to the previous exercise, and it's also 6/8 time, so there's 6 beats in the bar. However, if you look more closely at this exercise, you'll notice that there's a pinch at the beginning of many of the bars. A pinch being where you play 2 strings at the same time, using either the primary in the index, the primary in the middle, or the primary in the annular. The fingers we use to pluck the strings in this particular exercise are far more predictable than the previous exercise, in that you cover the 3 bass strings with the primary finger, the index finger plays the G string, the middle finger plays the B string, and the annular finger plays the top E string. You'll notice, as with the previous exercises, there's a repeat on the 4th line back to the beginning, so you repeat the first 4 lines. Unlike the 2 previous exercises, this exercise should be played with a metronome, and it should be played with a fairly slow metronome, somewhere between 60 beats per minute and 70 beats per minute. Let's hear it being played before we go through it at 70 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Right, let's take a look at the first 4 lines. And the first thing to point out is that the first line and the third line are identical. And if you look at the first 2 bars of the first, second and third line, these are identical as well. Watch out for the 4th line, because this is the only line in the entire tune that doesn't have any pinches on it. Right, let's hear the first 4 lines being played without a repeat at 80 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. If you think you're ready, try and play along with it. And here that is again at 80 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. You'll notice we're not speeding this up any because it's at the full speed anyway. Right, let's hear that one last time at 80 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction in case you want to try and play along with it. Right, let's take a look at the last 3 lines. And straight away, you'll notice that the first line and the second line are identical, which means less to learn. Here's the last 3 lines being played at 80 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Here's the last 3 lines again at 80 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction in case you want to try and play along with it. Right, let's bring the whole tune together at 80 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. and I'll include the repeat of the first 4 bars. I'll put the metronome beats for this exercise at the end of the video, so you can practice with them if you want to. And that's it for this lesson. I'm sure not many people could have mastered these 3 exercises in the space of this video. So don't worry if you can't. What you have to do is just practice them for a bit over the next week or so. And then when you think you're ready, move on to the next lesson. If you're new to these lessons, please like, subscribe and hit the bell icon, and then you'll be notified when I upload a new lesson. And if you want to go through the lessons in order, I've put a link down below in the description to the playlist of all the lessons. So if you've missed any, or if you're new to the course, it's really wise to go through all the lessons because it's a progressive course. And remember, you can get the PDF ebooks for book 1 and 2 of the fingerstyle guitar course completely free at www.ebooksforguitar.com. Thanks again for watching.